Hello and welcome to my Happy Cells and Souls YouTube channel. I'm Julie Powers, and as a licensed Zumba instructor and as a partner with the Juice Plus company, my mission is to help people know that life is better when they dance through it and to inspire healthy living around the world. But my expanded mission is really to help create better health at the cellular level and more joy at the cellular level. And I believe that our time here on earth is supposed to be happy and joyful, and I want people to live through that. So I want them to have happier, healthier bodies because we only get one body while we're here, so we have to take care of it as best we can. And I want us to all remember that we can embrace our inner beings so that we're filled with joy and light so we can shine on other people in the best possible way. So that brings us to the videos on this channel. And I've had the honor and privilege of getting to know some very remarkable people throughout my life, and each one has something different to offer to the world, just as you do as you're watching this. And I want to learn from all of them. And my theory is that if we're not learning and growing, we're just stagnant and dying, and that's no fun. So I believe that we should learn from everyone, and everybody has value and purpose. And so today's conversation is with somebody that I've known pretty much since the time he was conceived, and that would be Ian Powers, my son, who lives in Colorado now, and you can tell that he's a character. And, you know, I may have a lot more wisdom than Ian from life experience, but you know, when you're growing up and you always think that you're smarter than your parents, in this case, it's actually true.
Wow.
And Ian is smarter than me by a lot. But
Why have
again,
you never told me this before?
I'm
This is
telling
the
you
first
this
time I've ever heard this.
he's very, very smart, and he's just quite a character to live with. So now he lives out there in Colorado on his own. But one thing that I wanted to talk to Ian about today is about environmental sustainability and making choices that will help us all live on a happier, healthier planet. Because if we live on a happier, healthier planet, we get to be happier and healthier, right? And so, Ian, you took classes in college that were really all about environmental sustainability. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. The classes I took were a lot more like very scientific, theoretical, large concept, big picture, broad stroke kind of stuff, which gets very convoluted. So not really going to focus on that, but what we will focus on is things you can do at an individual level to affect change. Because in my opinion, that's the number one unit is going to be the individual that you can actually affect change. So people are saying, well, the government has to do this or the corporations have to do this. You should be the one first doing it. So we can't rely on other people to do things. It's going to be the first person. That's going to be you to change something. So there's a number of things you can do that really aren't that painful in your life to reduce, your carbon footprint, just make better, more eco-friendly choices, that kind of thing.
Well, I think that that's a really good point, is that everything starts with us as an individual, and whether it's our own home or where we work, making those decisions on a daily basis, just like how we take care of our bodies. It all starts with one person taking those steps. So you've traveled a lot in your 23 years already.
Oh, you're
And
aging me.
I'm aging you. Well, I'm aging myself. And so I know that you've seen different things in different places around the world. And I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit, about what you've seen and how different communities or different countries really view things like environmental sustainability.
Sure. So earlier this year, I lived in France, in southern France, in a small town outside of Bordeaux called Le Bourne for about 3 months. Really cool experience. The big thing with like the environmental perspective on when looking at that is a lot of people there kind of grow up with this mindset of not wasting, which is a lot more prominent in Europe, I believe, like starting at an earlier age, as opposed to, at least in previous decades in the United States, where We weren't as focused on, our waste and just keeping track and metrics on that. So basically what it was is one of the big things, they had this entire like promotional campaign going on throughout the entire country called Zero Waste, or Zero Déchet, for all you French nuts out there. And
It
basically
always sounds better when you say it in French.
it does. Just sounds like random syllables. But basically what it was is just looking out throughout your entire life, through everything you do, every moment of your day, saying how you can take things and not waste them and make them go into other things that are productive. So for example, in the house I lived with, a couple French people, obviously, and they had a compost thing in their little garden. And in that garden, they would grow their own vegetables and stuff like that. Obviously, that's not indicative of the entire population. Most people aren't growing their own vegetables in Europe. It's not just this utopian paradise of eco-friendliness, but there was a lot more awareness of the fact that we shouldn't be wasting these things and stuff like that. And even sometimes I would, think to throw away something, and they'd look at me like, why are you throwing that away? And I'd be like, because you do. And and that's coming from,
I didn't know to teach you that. That wasn't something that we did. And that is something that I've thought about, is I probably need to do a compost pile.
Yeah. And then there's also ways to do compost indoors if you don't have the space outdoors without it smelling like crap. So I'm not going to go into how to do that. You can easily look up how to compost inside. So basically that was one aspect of it. On a little bit larger scale, they still very much had the European romantic market, local market in the square kind of thing, and they would actually go to it. Obviously it skews a little more towards the older generations, but there were still young people that would go there. It was pretty much on a competitive pricing scale with like the supermarkets, like the Walmart Schnucks of France. Pretty much you could go there. The only thing was that why people didn't do it is because it was on specific days. So going to those markets was a little bit more of a hassle, but if you were able to make time for it, you were buying produce from people that were in the region. Obviously that didn't have just an enormous amount of pesticides and chemicals on their crops, and you were basically stimulating the local economy. All of this was within the lens of sustainability. And to get to that market, if you lived within proximity, obviously European cities are going to be more walking friendly. So you're not going to be taking private cars to get to the market and stuff like that. You walk there, they have these little like bags, like container leather things with like wheels on it that they would like stroll with them, put in their produce, stuff like that, refrigerated and all that kind of thing, or insulated, not refrigerated. But yeah, so that was really cool to see that. And then when I told them that like that pretty much doesn't exist in the United States.
It does, because we do have a lot of farmers markets.
No, I was getting there.
Okay.
I was like, we have a thing called farmers markets, but nobody goes to those except for like 1% of the city population. So it's a lot more widespread in Europe to go to the market and things like that. Biggest thing also in Europe is obviously, using public transportation. Their network of public transportation is a lot more robust and established than ours is here. We could go into a whole theoretical discussion of why that happened. It's not important right now. Basically, cars dominate in the United States, whereas public transportation and the pedestrian dominates in Europe, which is a lot more eco-friendly approach. Now, there's a ton of things why that happened, and it's not necessarily our fault specifically. It's just kind of how things shaped out. So trying to find ways to walk more, even whenever your town in the United States is a lot more spread out than a European city, is important. The big thing to do with that is if you have errands to run or something like that, just try and be conscious of when you're going to run those errands and just make more of a detailed effort to do those all in the same time whenever you're taking your car out, because every time you're taking your car out, that's doing a number on the earth and its atmosphere and everything like that. So basically carpooling, obviously there's things you've heard countless times before, trying to go to work with a coworker instead of driving yourself. If you have the option, try to bike if you can. The town I live in right now is the most bike-friendly town I've ever lived in. There's bike lanes everywhere. You bring bikes everywhere. There's bike hookups everywhere. It's an entire bike culture. So that's something that, again, starts with the individual, where if you start biking and other people start biking because they see you biking and you start advocating to bike to work instead of ride to work, people take notice of that. It's not just like a wasted effort. Things will change if you actually try to put effort into changing it. And then on top of that, where I live as well in Colorado, so kind of shifting from Europe, is everyone that lives in the city limits gets a trash can and a recycling bin. Trash can probably about this big right here. I don't know the dimensions for that. I'm not a carpenter. And then the recycling bin is like twice the size of the trash bin. Now, like I said, that's dependent on your local community. There's a lot of communities that maybe don't even have a recycling program, but you can definitely find ways around that with other communities close by. And then obviously, if you are planning on driving somewhere else that has recycling, talk to your neighbors and try to figure out a carpool thing that you can all take one car to go drop off that recycling if possible. Because if you're driving somewhere else to go recycle, it's kind of like defeating the purpose. You know what I mean?
Right. And I don't know if you remember when we started recycling at our own home, when you still lived here, that
before you kicked me out.
Before we kicked you out and sent you away to college and said, don't come back. No.
You're too smart for us.
You're too smart. Yeah. That how, I don't know how much lower the trash was in the trash can.
Yeah.
When we really started recycling, it's amazing. We barely fill half the trash can up with trash.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that can be recycled. And it's a little more complicated now because there are countries that used to take our recycling from the United States and actually turn it into other materials and,
right.
and do that for us. And now they aren't anymore because of whether it's political issues or whatever. So you do have to seek out a little more, where are my resources? What can I do about that? But I think too, just recycling things that maybe you were going to throw away that are okay. They're just stuff you don't want to use anymore. Sometimes people don't want to take the time to take it to a resale shop or, like a local ministerial alliance or a thrift store or Goodwill or something like that, because sometimes you're like, this is just a pain. I don't want to have to pack up the car and take it. And so they just throw it in their trash can. And it was perfectly good and could have been used by someone else. And so I think repurposing things and giving those away, even just like I put things on Facebook and say, here's a picture of something. I'm like, does anybody need this? Anybody want it? Because I don't want to have to take it somewhere. And then you generally 9 times out of 10, someone will say, I want that. And they'll come by and pick it up. Right. And I didn't have to mess with it. So I think that's really a good option too.
It goes with, clothes a lot too. There's a lot of waste in old clothes, buying new clothes, that kind of thing. Going to thrift shops, if you're into that. If you're not, what I kind of do is if I have clothes that I don't have, and there's a whole other discussion about how much clothes you should actually be buying. But what I do is if I don't have a item of clothing that I haven't worn in a long time, I'm like, I'm not going to wear that maybe once a year. Put it on Facebook Marketplace, see if anyone bites. After a week, if nothing happens, take it to a donation center. Pretty simple. And then, just daily life things to help cut down on your footprint and just to be more conscious of your world that you're living in is having reusable grocery bags whenever you go grocery shopping.
There's even little net produce things that you can get instead of using those plastic produce things. And there's so many different kinds of bags. Yeah. You can get those at Trader Joe's or, there's just a variety of things. Every grocery store has them, or your favorite whatever. Yeah. And there's insulated ones. So if you're going to be traveling a distance from the grocery store and you're going to have cold items, frozen items, you can get the insulated ones as well.
Which also they don't give you insulated ones at the store, so that's already a bonus. If you had cold things that you were buying from the store, so just get that. I'd show you what I have for mine, but I'm wearing underwear only right now, so if I stood up, you'd see me.
Thank you for that.
But what else was I saying? Oh, super easy thing. This blows my mind that people still buy 24 packs of plastic water bottles. It's just for convenience.
We used to be so guilty of that. We used to have.
I wasn't. I didn't buy anything. I didn't have any money back then.
you just use them. But we used to buy water bottles, almost by the pallet, and we'd go through them nonstop. Now we would always put them in the recycling bin, or
We're
we
like, oh, that works.
times. But what the heck, right? And
Yeah.
you have a water bottle there with you right now?
No, it's in my
No.
bedroom.
Okay. So there's like the glass water bottles. I love the glass ones. I always feel like drinking out of glass is just, it tastes so much better, so much fresher. I like the stainless steel.
Ooh, ASMR.
But then, if you buy a drink that's in a glass bottle, like this was a kombucha bottle, but there are other things that you might buy that have a glass bottle. They're really good bottles. So now my refrigerator is full of glass bottles that I've collected over, I don't know, several months, and they're filled with water. So when I have guests and they're like, oh, can I just grab a bottle of water? I'm like, sure. And they go in there and like, oh, wait, this is glass. I said, yeah, it's yours. You can keep it. Reuse it, please. So that, yeah.
And so with that as well, if you're worried about like using tap water or something like that, one of the biggest things that I actually did learn, not the biggest thing because it's not that crazy, but one of the most shocking things that I learned early on when I was studying this in college was that on average, the overwhelming majority of all water bottle suppliers, the water in there is actually going to be more polluted than your daily tap water just from, your sink. And then you can easily get some kind of filter on there. It just cuts down on so much, one, money, which is the big reason to stop buying water bottles, and two, cuts down on a lot of plastic waste.
Right. And I know that some other things that you can use and reuse. I know this is not that big of a deal in the huge picture of life, but like straws. I used to drink out of plastic straws all the time, and I have, had like a container of straws that I use, but now I have like a stainless steel straw. And that's, if you really want something cold, drink out of a stainless steel straw or a silicone straw. And it's so easy to keep it in like a little plastic bag in my purse. And I use that. And there's always a little cleaning brush that comes with those. But I take a bag in my purse to restaurants, and I ask them not to bring me a straw, and I use my own straw. And people sometimes look at me really weird, but people look at me weird anyway, and that's okay. I'm used to it. And I think it's just one little tiny thing that I can do to not be using so much plastic.
Yeah, I'm going to die on this hill for the straw thing. I think it's totally overblown and greenwashed. I don't buy it. The straw thing is dumb. It's just a way for companies to say that they're green when they're really not, when they have a ton of back end waste going on in their manufacturing and everything like that. And I would say the biggest thing that you could do is, in terms of groceries or eating or stuff like that, is cut down on the amount of time that you're driving to the grocery store, and cut down on the amount of products and produce that you're buying at the grocery store that come from way far away on the globe. So if you're buying, things out of season, for example, like avocados and stuff like that out of season or something like that, which, one, it's just super expensive, so I don't know why you're doing that in the first place. But two, that is so bad for the environment, because there are so many different steps on the logistics supply chain to get it from that region to your grocery store. So try to buy things that are in season, because that always works a lot better, and it's less stress on the environment as well. So
and to grow your own, if there's a way for you, if depending on where you live, you might live in an area that you can grow outdoors in your own garden year round, but there are lots of options for indoor gardening, and that's another option as well. And if we can buy closer to home, local is always the best, but even within your own state, then you're right, it's a lot less exhaust and everything else. So can you think of anything else? We have like 1 minute left, Ian. Anything? I know that you also have a whole theory on investing and trying to invest in companies that are looking at environmental sustainability and, being conscientious about the way that they're doing business. Is that something you can wrap up for us? And
Yeah, if you're interested in investing, which everyone should be, the best time to invest was yesterday. So basically just look up, there's a lot of like indexes, indicators. Just do your research, look up what are environmentally conscious companies or ones that aren't as harmful to the planet as others. There's a lot of large brand companies that are going to be pretty harmful, but there's also, on the same token, a lot of really big companies that are doing really good things for the environment and trying to cut down on their waste. So just I would research it, because when you're putting your money places, that's the most powerful indicator of what you're wanting to achieve in the world. So if you're wanting to make money for yourself while also doing it in an environment and conscious way, just do your research and find out what works for you.
Right, because the theory is when you know more, you can do more, and when you know better, you can do better. So as you mentioned at the beginning, it starts with each individual making decisions and making better choices. So thank you for spending this time with me today. And
Thanks, Mom.
thank you, Ian.